live.
You're now watching two old farts making noises.
Look at you hanging out with a guy from another planet. Look at that. We do one show. We do one show on UFOs and aliens, and all of a sudden now you drive around town and
He's
you're
driving
Oh,
around. Yeah.
man, seriously, I can't fight them off. They just keep turning up saying, "Oh, are you the guy that was on that podcast? Ah, we want to chat with you." So
There you go.
Yeah.
don't worry.
So is it standard then by Beamer that you get an alien next year?
The
Is that
standard,
what it is?
the standard optional extra, the optional extra.
Optional extra by the Beamer,
What
yeah.
was the thing in? Do you remember Men in Black?
yes,
And do you remember when they go autopilot? And it's a bit like Airplane. Remember the movie Airplane when they have
Right.
autopilot? They've got an inflatable pilot. The same thing, same gag they used in Men in Black. And what I really thought was funny is like I think his Mercedes rocks up and there's an autopilot, and the
Right.
pilot then the guy then deflates, and then I think Tommy Lee Jones, right? He's with him, and he goes, "Oh, is that a standard feature?" He goes, "No, it used to come with a black dude, but he kept getting pulled over." So.
I remember that.
Oh, that was hilarious.
And most of our
Perfect
listeners,
thing to talk about when we're talking about aliens. But
right?
how was the reception to the last show?
The last show did well. It got many views, not just on the viewership on YouTube, but on the podcast side, it got more than we usually get. I think it was the Bob Lazar, the UFOs and whatnot. But what's really funny is,
do you have any first contact scenarios? Have any alien species reached out to be on the next podcast yet?
some of our guests, I think, are, but I'm not sure. I can't prove it. But some of our co-hosts or hosts on some of the shows, I think, as well. But I will say, literally the
I
day
think
after.
we're slowly being surrounded by lizard people. So it's difficult to know.
Stop talking about my people. So
That's the problem.
That's the problem. But here's what's really funny. The day after the show, the whistleblower came out. I guess we're going to talk about aliens for a little bit. The whistleblower came out and he said, we've got alien spacecraft. We've got this. We got that. 2 weeks ago, some guy said, but the first alien crash was in Italy in 1936. And he's showing proof of that. And then a senator, I think it was from Tennessee, said, he sits on the, the secret committee where they talk about it. He said, from the stuff he has seen, he said, his quote was on a British talk show, "We are not ready." And the lady goes, "What do you mean we are not ready?" He goes, "Hey, we are not ready if they come and meet with us." Or he said, because they could obliviate us in a second. He says, he literally said this on a British show. I read it last night in the news. He said, I have seen video of their craft. Their craft can go from zero to like whatever. They can bend space and time. He says, they will appear. They'll go in the water. They do this. It's this whole thing. And then now there's all these other reports about all these other senators, all these other whistleblowers are starting to come out. At some point, like I said, there was a press conference at the beginning of COVID. The Pentagon said, we have off-world vehicles in our possession. And the general gave this on CNN. I watched it. And it fell through the crack because it was COVID. And I'm like, okay, well, we know you have it. Let's just like get with the program. And the other was another senator who's like, they're here. Like, he's not saying we're working with them. He goes, but they're here. And all these people now are deathbed confessions. There was an astronaut. It wasn't Edgar Mitchell, I got the name wrong the last time, but it was another guy who just passed away. And he said that if you read the Sumerian texts, I guess the Akonami and all this other stuff that's there, he goes, that is probably the closest to the truth you will ever get about aliens, UFOs and whatnot. And he said, theoretically, we're the alien. The human race is the alien to this planet. Yeah. We didn't, it's not Darwin. It's none of that. He goes, we're the alien.
Yeah.
And I thought that was fascinating. So I was totally like, okay, this is interesting.
Well, even in a Darwinian sense, I mean, there is a school of thought that says that life on this planet arrived in an asteroid. So basically the building blocks of life weren't actually created here. They actually came through from somewhere else. So that's quite possible. Interesting. I think also Stephen Hawking didn't he once say as well, when you talk about the Voyager craft that's going out there with basically here's where we live map on it.
Yep.
And he said that's just a bad idea, because if any alien species is smart enough to find it, discover it, and decipher it, then they're probably smart enough to annihilate us. You know what I mean? It's like, so he said that's just a bad invitation to be sending out. So I know he's probably right.
But here's the other thing I find fascinating. Like, I like Graham Hancock, and I like reading his books because I find his books fascinating. But what I thought was interesting is Graham Hancock said we have a forgotten, like, past, or like our DNA at some point, we just don't remember. But since we weren't here, say 10 or 20 million years ago, how do I know Atlantis didn't exist? How do I know this and that, right? And or if you read I'm going to pronounce it wrong, so I apologize to all my Indian viewers and in Indian podcasts, but the Vasharami, the book talks about flying temples and this and that. And they describe how they built them. I remember I read
all the
book
Greek
about
mythology, or the Norse mythology. But the thing is, like, why even go that far back? It's interesting, isn't it, what you say? Because it's often struck me that, with what's happening nowadays, I mean, we're veering off topic here, but that's what we do, because, hey.
It's your show.
Yeah. Hey, this is a Sherman from the German. So
I'll come back to that as well, because I'm sure every episode people are like confused. What the hell is a sermon from the German? But
that's right.
Let me just finish the thought I was on before I forget it. And at the moment, we're in this era where we're kind of rewriting literature, and we're rewriting history, and we're taking down statues, and we're canceling this and canceling that. And I'm like, this is not good, because we need to preserve history, because if we don't preserve it, we won't be able to learn from it. And it's important to learn from the past to go to the future. But like you say, if you go further back, you go, well, how much of ancient history has either been erased or completely rewritten? And there's stuff that we just don't know about that actually did happen or did not happen. So it's very interesting about what if we had. I would love to be able, not so much to time travel, but to time see. Wouldn't that be a good thing, to be able to project our thoughts, or be able to project the past to us, so that we could actually see what actually happened and what didn't happen?
Well, I can take you back. I'm a time traveler.
Do you not?
Well, we're all time travelers in a sense, aren't we?
Yeah, exactly.
We wake up, and suddenly every time we go to sleep and wake up, we move 7 hours into the future. So what I mean,
the future,
or the past, depending on which way you look at it. Or sideways.
Oh, there you go. There's a paper that was written by a general for the CIA. It's called the Gateway Project, and the Gateway Project talks about the absolute, and in between all of that, it talks about that you can go into a trance, and in this trance, you can go into whether it's another dimension, other worlds, back and forward in time. You can change your thing. And I found that interesting. And everybody's like, I read it and I was like, wait a second, this is written by like a real guy who's still alive today. And I'm sure he'll never come on the show because I'm sure he doesn't want to talk about it. But I mean, the CIA was using the Gateway Project with their operatives to see if they could go into this trance, and like if you will walk through the Kremlin type of thing. So, but people, when you read the recounts of it, we're talking about the things, for lack of a better term, that they met, or the entities that they met. So I find it fascinating, and I think it's just interesting
is he positing that when you're asleep and dreaming, you're actually traveling elsewhere? You're actually going into another dimension or something?
Maybe, right? Because
I think I read recently that some scientists are looking into being able to record your dreams, and I was like, no, that's
really not. That's not good.
To be honest, like, I don't actually remember most of my dreams. When I wake up, I literally have the ability to just forget what I dreamed about, because some of them must be quite weird and warped. But there are a couple that are sort of have been not frequently repetitive, but I've had them a few times. One I won't go into, but another one that I've had, which I just put up a post saying, what's the weirdest dream you have related to cars? And I've had this dream where, and you can imagine, it's not even a dream, it's an absolute nightmare scenario for a motoring journalist, because I've had this dream where eventually, I don't know if I mentioned it before, you can actually see it over my shoulder, there's a Lotus Esprit. It's my dream car. So, and I've tested them a few times, I reviewed them and stuff like that, but I haven't owned one. So in my dream, I finally get to the point where I own this car, and it's so excited. I've got the car. The car's delivered to my house, and I'm like, wow, this is great. So I go downstairs, and there's a crowd. For some reason, there's a crowd there, and they're like, oh, Shazad, you got your car, and you're so excited. I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited. Oh, you're gonna take it for a drive? I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna take it for a drive. I jump in the car, and they're like, well, start it up, go for a drive. I'm like, oh, do a burnout, go for it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. And I'm looking around the car, and I'm looking at the interior of the car. I'm like, I have no idea how to drive. The entire ability to drive has completely been erased from my mind. I don't know what the steering wheel does. I don't know how to start it. I don't know. And literally, everybody's all these expectations. I'm looking at, I don't know what to do.
That's funny.
Nightmare.
That is funny though. That is very
funny. By the way,
funny.
the stemming from the German. Let's just clear that up. I feel like I feel guilty that I have to clear this up every time. Stemming from the German. None of us are German.
That's right.
But the point was that we did a few of these episodes from my BMW, which is the German. So the idea was to do them from the car. But every time we do this, I have a good excuse. Like right now, it's just chucking down with rain, so I don't really want to be out there. So.
There you go. Well, and that's why now the opening credit has you and the alien in the BMW. So we're close enough for it.
What is it? Sermon from the German alien.
Could be. Could be. And the Germans were very big into looking at UFOs and all of that. And, they had the German bell, and they had this and they had that. I've been fascinated by this subject since I'm 6 years old. So back, before the earth cooled. And I think that because of what's going on with the phones, and there's this guy the other day, I was reading an article, and then they have this video of this guy that captured it while he was taking a selfie, and another guy that did this, and these people will look at it, and they'll have these, the magazines will have their editor or their forensic photographer guy look at it, and they're like, no, that's a real picture. And I'm fascinated that the governments still are going to be like, no, they don't. So they're slowly telling us it does, but it really is a point now. It's like, all right, we all know it's here.
Yeah.
You probably know more than you'll ever tell us, but at some point you might as well just say it's true, because people now, they don't trust the government.
All these clips of people walking around with some form of communicator talking in them.
Yeah.
Films from going.
Oh yeah, the historical clips.
Yeah.
I've seen some of those pictures. Basically, it look like people got mobile phones. It's like, what?
With a cell phone or something. There was they did one of a picture from 1630.
You would have thought, to be honest, that if you were that advanced, you would not still be walking around stuck with a bit of plastic stuck to the side of your head.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
So but you do the must thing.
What people will say, and it goes back to what you were saying about the fact that, do people believe pictures or not? But so many of these pictures now, I saw the other day a sequence of amazing images. Somebody had basically asked AI, and this is a great segue. It's a great, you know what's a good segue? That picture that you mentioned at the beginning of the video with me sitting with an alien in the car. I used AI to generate that image or part of that image. Cool. And then and then the concept that I'm talking about is I saw somebody had typed in, they said, we want to see babies skydiving over Dubai. And it generated a whole bunch of pictures of babies just grinning and skydiving. And you can see the landscape of Dubai. And I swear, you look at the picture and you're like, did somebody just chuck a baby out of an airplane? That's what you would think. It's absolutely bonkers.
Well, it would be more believable if it was Argentina, of course, but there you go.
Right. That's going to be our thumbnail for this show, is babies being thrown out of airplanes, skydiving over Dubai. I think that's going to be the thumbnail. I think that'll get some views, or it'll get banned.
Let's touch a little bit about AI, because I was watching a program. I was absolutely fascinated by it. And they're saying, this one guy in particular, he was a biologist, and he said, why are we spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to go to a red planet where we know there's nothing there? Where we should be, well, his argument was this, where we have species all around us that, with the help of AI, and they're currently doing it now with whales and dolphins, they're currently working out a language that these creatures are speaking. Because he says, I can believe that Dr. Dolittle is more achievable than flying to Mars, just by using AI. So what they're doing is they're processing all the, because there are millions of hours of birds singing and whales singing and dolphins communicating, and they're now threading these all together. And the next step is to introduce an animal bot. So it'll be like a whale bot, and they want to put that into the oceans to see whether or not they can call out to the whales to see if they can communicate with them. And I thought, wow, that was AI. We haven't even scratched the surface, have we, of where this could bring us?
That opens up so many avenues of discussion right there, doesn't it? Everything.
Because then animals slow. Then of course the arrogance of the Homo sapiens all us shaved monkeys,
Yeah.
is that we think, that there is something else in the world which we now live in, which we dominate, which may well have a personality, may well have some form of spirituality about them. And that has enormous ramifications for, factory farming and, animal cruelty, whatever.
It does. A lot of the stuff you see from the photos and clips on YouTube and stuff like that, where you see animals behaving in a certain way or doing a certain thing, and you really start to wonder, you're like, hang on, are we underestimating exactly how smart these animals actually are? Or how empathic they actually are? I remember seeing a video. It's from a few years ago, actually, but a dog gets run over. I don't know which country it is, maybe India or somewhere like that. A dog gets run over, and then another dog goes out there to pull this body aside off the road, and it's caring for this dog. And you just go, that there's something else going on there. That's it's not hunting for food or anything like that. There's something else going on there. And you see so many of these things where you think you see this behavior patterns and these things, and you go, there's a level of intelligence there that maybe we're not quite understanding or grasping. They are talking about things like, for example, dolphins having a lot of intelligence and stuff like that. And the idea, and like I said, what you've just said, there's so many different levels to it, from like animal welfare, the reality of how intelligent animals actually are, to being able to use AI for things like, well, in Star Trek terminology, a universal translator. Because imagine if AI can actually distinguish that and can actually break down forms of communication into a language that we could actually use. We could actually be talking to the animals.
That would be awesome. I would love to talk to my dog. I mean, that to me would be awesome. Because, I talk to her anyway, and everyone looks at me like I'm on drugs. But I would love to be able to talk to her.
Does your dog want to talk to you?
Well, I don't think anybody wants to talk to me.
To be honest, like if it was a cat, that would be a realistic scenario.
Just one last...
Go away, human.
I mean, just one last point about animal intelligence. So there was a piece, I think it's probably been all over Europe now, about the crows and the magpies, because on the balconies of a lot of office blocks and shopping centers, they have all these rows of spikes which are put on top to stop pigeons and all sorts of birds from pooing everywhere. And what these birds have been doing, they found this then in Antwerp. They've been ripping these things off the buildings,
right,
and they've made a nest out of them. And the nest they think has two functions. One is to keep other birds away from their own offspring, and the other is to see just. It's a bit like wearing a Rolex, or blinging it up for female birds. So you check it out. You can see it. They found they put it in the National History Museum here in Holland. They actually took this nest down and displayed it. Amazing.
It could also be part of conditioning their young to withstand those spikes. Do you see what I mean? It's like they've realized that these things are there to basically oppose what they're doing. So let's get used to them. Let's literally let's own them. Let's figure out how to get around these things. Wow, I mean that's
when our cat goes into the garden at the back of the house here. We live near woods, so we have lots of magpies and lots of crows, and they all communicate. The moment that he goes into the garden, they're all making a noise.
Yeah.
They all make always the same noise. It's almost as if, look, that big black cat's out again.
Yeah.
So
God, I tell you, gossiping. We finally get to understand what they're saying, and they're just gossiping and nonsense about each other.
Yeah, exactly. Because they do know that crows and magpies.
Number 5, what a bastard he is! He stole all my food. That's all I said about.
They do know that crows and magpies, in particular, do gossip. They do have series of what appear to be conversations. Yeah. And again, the AI is very close now to because it's a matter of data, isn't it? Pull all that data together, find the patterns in the data. The pattern will then probably represent some form of language through the repetitiveness of the pattern, and through that, you could translate it. I mean, that's just so exciting.
So what are you saying, David? So are you saying you're a fan of AI then? Is this let's get your takes, both of you, what your takes are on AI.
Oh, wow. Go ahead,
Well,
David. David's
go on,
making
David.
AI move. Are you kidding? We have AI. Before you go on this, I just have to do this really quick.
Okay.
David's got AI movies on our channel that he has made. One is
Oh,
called
really?
Twin Bloods. One is which has its own
That's
playlist.
a
It's a
vampire
vampire movie.
series.
He's got an AI movie about Alzheimer's, which did really well. He's got another one about us, two old farts, how we got started in AI. And tonight, well, not when this is out, it'll already be out, but it's called Freedom? What's it called?
It's called
Freedom?
Ambers of Freedom.
Ambers of Freedom, which is about apocalypse world that he did all in AI. So
How did you do this?
there
What's
you
the
go.
process?
Well, basically, it's like I said to Steve, it's a bit of a Cinderella project, because I have software which will enable me to make stories, and it'll do an automatic voiceover. I can choose the music, I can choose the voiceover. So when I add to the storyline the videos, all sorts of different videos, you can actually build up a story. So it's not 100% AI, it's like 95%, because I still have to coordinate the video clips and put them in some form of order. But the storyline's completely AI, the voiceover's AI, and the music's all AI.
So this is very interesting in the sense that what you're doing is you're using AI as a creative tool. So
I'm trying to do away with all our guests. Oh,
well, that's helpful, isn't it? Yeah, that means you'd have to stop paying them. Oh, paying them? Hang on.
What? Can't you feel the love? She's up there. Can't you feel the love?
Absolutely. But the point being is that you're doing exactly the right thing to do with AI, is that you're using it as a tool. It's like anything else. It's like over the years, people used to draw. Then we got cameras. People are like, oh, now you don't have to draw anymore. But people still draw, but now you can use a camera. Then we had Photoshop. People are like, oh, now you can change the sky. You can do this. Is all cheating. It's like, no, it's a tool. It's something that you do, right? So now we've got AI where we can completely generate the picture. Now the problem with that is obviously the implications of not being able to use photographic evidence, for example, because who can tell anymore, or unless you can deeply understand how these things actually work. But which is interesting actually, because I can say that there's somebody here who generated a whole bunch of AI images based on the concept of the person that owns this car, what kind of place would they live in? So basically, like, if you've got a Ferrari, do you live in a mansion? If you've got a van, do you live in a terraced house, whatever sort of thing. So they generated a whole bunch of images. And so to me as a car person, I look at the images, they look completely accurate, especially in terms of the background, the buildings and all the rest of it. But when I look at the cars, as a car person, I can slightly detect, I'm like, yeah, no, that doesn't look right. That's not real. That's not accurate. So there's still, it's still not 100%. There's still flaws in it, and there's still bits that they miss. So I think this is a fundamental issue, but this is why it's best still used as a tool, because as a tool, you can generate parts of it. And then like you're doing, you can take that part, which works, that part doesn't work. So I can leave that out. Then I can match that with that bit and create something. I was reading about the other day that some authors, people that write, novels and basically fiction, have started using AI. And you think, well, surely that is just cheating. But then I was reading into what they're actually doing. And what they're doing is that they're using AI to basically structure these things, or help them structure them, to help them create scenes or create descriptive text, and just using bits and pieces of it rather than getting AI to write an entire novel, and then to go back and check what you're doing. And I thought, well, that's great. It's the world's cheapest proofreader. Surely that'd be brilliant. But all of a sudden, I think in one sense, AI it's like anything, any new technology that comes along. In one sense, it's absolutely fantastic because it opens up all these possibilities. Creative people can suddenly be painters and filmmakers and artists and whatnot, whereas we couldn't before. But on the other hand, there's also the possibility that, it's going to take all our jobs away. What do you reckon about that?
Well, here's a funny thing. There was an article in the FT this morning, and it said that Hollywood, after 6 decades, is finally now shut down because they can't agree, because of AI, on the writer side, because AI can write, and on the actor side, they're worried about AI generated characters and how they get paid, right? So Hollywood now, according to the article, is officially shut down after 60 years, and now they're like, now they don't know what's going to happen. So I think it's interesting. Wait, let me finish. And let me finish. And I think what also is interesting is we use AI to write all our descriptions. Because if you go back to our very first shows, when I would write a description, I wouldn't watch the show. And with AI over the last 6 months, let's say, we use GPT-4. So we pay our $20 a month for it. My I'm like, Longsworth, or I'm like Tolstoy. I'm like, look at me. I can look at these are great descriptions. So it makes it more engaging. And also, if I have to do something in the business world, you have it's Bard or Brad or whatever from Google, which is more up to date. So between that and the ChatGPT, I literally can do anything now. So for me, it's a godsend because my writing sucks. But with this now, I can write the best I can, give it to it, and it gives me, whether it's 1 paragraph or 50 paragraphs or a book, and it's like here. And even it can do PowerPoint, which David sent me a video. You type in a VRB code, and it'll spit it all out. I stick it into PowerPoint, and it'll just give me, pick everything. I don't do anything except tell it this is what I want you to do. So for me, it's a godsend because I always hated PowerPoint. It would take me a week to do a presentation. Now it takes me about an hour and a half. So I like as a business tool on both sides of the fence, on our YouTube and entertainment channel, and in like the real world. So I like it for both.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. As I was trying to say earlier, sorry, that I think the Hollywood guys have actually missed the point, because unless you put sausage meat in, you're not going to get a sausage out the other end. And you say these books and they come from a creative point.
Right.
I mean, like I would be the last person to say that I'm anywhere near a part of a Hollywood script writer, but I have like a brain fart, and I think, okay, so now I have a place to put that brain fart. And it can, and what ChatGPT does is it then gives me a skeleton. Which I lacked the skill to do before. Now, I think if I was a script writer, I would already know how to build the skeleton. And
but
to build the story on it.
22, or was it 22 or 23 plot points anyway? In all of storytelling, there's only like a finite number of ways of doing that anyway. So it makes perfect sense. Just touching on ChatGPT, because obviously that's being used by a lot of people. I mean, I know students are using it a lot and to write their papers and stuff like that. I have looked at it. I am a writer, as a profession. I am a writer. I am a journalist, and I got to be honest. I have delved into it because I'm like, okay, well, maybe this could save me time. This could maybe help me in a little bit. But I've got to be honest with you. I've not been able to use any of the output of ChatGPT for anything that I've done, and the reason that I've not been able to use the output, and I will clarify that. I've not been able to use the output as it comes from there is because I just don't think it's good enough, and this is, so as a writer, for me, when I look at it, I'm like, it's just not good enough,
I have a question though. Are you using 3.5 or 4?
I'm using the free one.
Okay. That's why. So I pay the $20. But the difference, just so you know.
Let me explain what I mean though. What I mean is that when you're a writer, you're looking at the context of the words. You're listening to the sounds of the words. You're listening to the creativity of how you structure the sentences and thoughts and words. I've always been less about the grammatical correctness of what I'm writing and more about the sensations of what it's trying to evoke and what it's trying to get and the way that I'm trying to communicate to people. So I will literally, what they say about you got to learn the rules in order to break all the rules. And this is how I've always approached writing, because I've always done that. So if you have an AI device or a technical device that's writing, it's obviously following all the rules. And then when I'm looking at it, I'm going, no, I don't want that. Get rid of that, change that. But what I have found AI, the ChatGPT tool, to be quite useful in is actually research purposes. For that, I've actually found it to be quite useful. So when I go and I pitch an idea that I'm going to write about this such and such topic, and then normally what I would do is then I would Google it, or maybe I'd have to send an email to somebody that I knew or something to get certain information so I could put it together. But now I can feed most of it into this thing, realizing that actually it's surveyed the entire internet already, hasn't it? So you just ask it a question about a topic, and it will literally give you this information about that topic. I do double check it because I'm still not entirely confident in it. I do double check it, but I would say 99.9% of the time it's correct. So for that reason, I have been using it and I found it quite useful. What I've also seen is how other people, like you say, the 4.0 and stuff like that is interesting, because I know that, as I said, a lot of other writers are using it as a tool that helps them to write certain segments. So if they're writing a book or a larger document or a larger piece of work, and sometimes it's really hard to follow that all the way through. So they're using ChatGPT to help them write segments of it, which they can later then piece together. And I think that's really interesting. Yes, I haven't tried the latest version. So
I will say, let me say two things. Bard, which is Google's, is great for research because it's up to date to the second. ChatGPT goes back, I think it's to 2021.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So here's the other interesting thing. I was using 3.5.
Yeah.
My wife is a big techie, so she said, you need to try 4.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll spend $20. How bad can it be?
Yeah.
And the difference is like Chat 3.5, in my opinion, is like a high school freshman.
Yeah.
When you go to 4, it's like somebody who has a PhD.
But can you detect the tonality in the way that it writes?
I think 4 would write. So because I literally took something I wrote in 3.5 because it gives you both when you pay for it. And I said, okay, here's what I wrote in 3.5 when I was using free. Here's my 4. Make it better. Like it was 2 paragraphs. And those 2, it came with 2 paragraphs. So I'm like, wow. Like the 3.5 was writing like in crayon. Yeah. And now all of a sudden I have cursive and gorgeous, like from the 13th century type. And I was like, okay, I got it. So to me, it's worth it because I think it gives you that little extra.
It's interesting. That is interesting.
Yeah.
But Shazad, you touched on something.
I'm just gonna interject there and say that does that spell the end of freelancers like me? Do you know what I mean? It's like then that's part of it, isn't it? Because I'm like, okay, I know that I can still write better than the current ChatGPT. Yeah. But if you're saying that the 4.0 is that much better, then I'm like, well, I might as well retire now then.
No, you still need to put an idea in it.
Shazad, I was going to ask you because you touched very briefly upon it. You said, but are you using it to proofread your stuff?
Again, I have tried that. I've tried it and I've not been 100% happy with it because again, it goes back to the whole creativity aspect of, knowing the rules, but then knowing when to break the rules, I find that it's quite rigid in the way that it will apply all the rules. And at some point in the way that I'm writing or expressing ideas or abruptly breaking a sentence or abruptly putting out a word there or doing certain things with language, and ChatGPT can't cope with, or at least the one that I've tried can't cope with that. So so I have put stuff in there and said, right, proofread this. And then I got it output. I'm like, oh man, you've ruined it. You know what I mean? It's literally I have to use the original one, So I'm not actually, like I said, I've tried it once or twice. And again, I've not been satisfied with the results. Again, if you're writing an academic paper or if you're just writing something that's very dry and straightforward for a journal, I think it's perfect because I think you can do that. No problem at all. Because it can write technical stuff in a very regimented and correct manner. No problem at all. But when you're getting into something where you're trying to be creative, you're trying to basically evoke an emotion from the reader, I feel that it can't do that. Or certainly I have to now clarify the version that I've tried. I feel that it can't quite do that. But like I said, I haven't tried
you're talking about unemployment, but the people who are being unemployed at the moment are copywriters and technical writers, exactly for that reason.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you get such throughput with, continuously, and the level which comes out remains the same. So they're the first victims, I think. Not creative writers, because if you haven't got if you don't put the sausage meat in, nothing comes out the other end.
Well, this is the thing. I mean, to be honest, David, it's a little bit of a worry because we've always thought about computers and stuff. Because, this conversation is not just today. This conversation has been going on for like 30, 40 years now, right? About computers going to take over everything and robots are going to take over everything. And the one thing that us creative types have always been able to fall back on is like, oh, yes, well, computers and machines and robots can do the menial everyday tasks, but they can't create stuff. And then, of course, along comes ChatGPT and all these AI illustrated softwares, and suddenly they're doing all the creative work. And we're like, hang on, isn't that the stuff that we said they couldn't do? And now they are doing it. It's slightly worrying. Yeah?
But to go back to your one point, so what I learned is to use ChatGPT or Bard successfully, you have to ask the right question. So when I would use it in the beginning, I would be like, make this professional or make this better. So we are going after sponsors when you talk about pay, so we can pay you to come on and do this, right? So what we did is when I said to ChatGPT, I said, can you make my letter, instead of making it professional, I said, please make it more engaging as well as humorous. Yeah. And it did. So what I've learned is, and I learned this from my wife because I didn't know this, you have to ask it what you want. If I say make a professional letter, it gives me it gives you very, very boom. But if I say, can you add humor, make it engaging? Like when I say, please give me a description for YouTube and make it engaging. It's much different than I say, please give me a description for YouTube. It's and you're like, wow. So you have to, it's like you're teaching a little kid, I guess, for lack of a better term. You have to teach it.
You have to be very specific. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
Recently, we had Eid al-Adha. So this is an Islamic, it's like an Islamic festival celebration. It celebrates the end of Hajj, which is the pilgrimage to Mecca. And at the end of it, it's traditional to do an animal sacrifice, And traditionally in our countries, we would know, I mean, you can be a goat or a camel or a cow. Traditionally, a goat is used by a lot of people. So I wanted to create a kind of a graphic that I wanted to put out there just to celebrate and say, Eid Mubarak, everybody, but I wanted it to be appropriate. And of course, I can't draw. So I tried using ChatGPT, not ChatGPT, one of the AI art illustrator things. And I had to be very, very specific with what I wanted. And I'll show you the final result first, So this is the result. I'll send you a screen grab of this later, but if you can make that.
Oh, wow.
That's
very cool.
So I wanted, basically, in keeping with what the brown car guy, I wanted a cool goat driving a convertible, going to the mosque, saying, basically celebrating Eid, right? So this is what it gave me. But that was after a few different attempts, because I haven't got all of them. But for example, like one of the first ones it gave me was that. And that's just weird. Just like head popping out the top of a car. It didn't really make any sense. and another one that it gave me was this one, which is again very similar. So again, I had to keep refining my description and keep putting it in to see if I eventually got what I wanted, which actually was pretty close. Even without.
I do find that slightly disturbing that it was a very happy goat that's gone off to be sacrificed.
Yeah, I know. but the analogy is like whenever there's these fried chicken shops and they always have a picture of a chicken there smiling.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense, But hey,
They have one here in Holland. It's called I think it's literally called the Happy Pig, and it's from a slaughterhouse. So you've got this like. This smiling pig, and I think, literally.
Now this is going to suck when you can AI.
I'm sure you both read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes.
And you remember, was it the restaurant at the end of the world where the cow comes up and says, "Which part of me do you want to eat?" and all.
Have you read the book at the restaurant at the end of the world? That's a great book as well.
So I have read them years ago, but things like that really kind of stuck in my mind. I was like, oh my god, imagine if we get there. And you were talking earlier about being able to translate animals. What if the cow does walk up to you in the restaurant and say, oh, my hind is particularly good today.
Oh my god.
Well, it's almost as if Douglas Adams was like tuned into this, because as one of the
books, science fiction isn't it?
One of the books in the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy Companion is when he ends up, I think he's marooned on a planet which is just inhabited by birds. Yeah. And then he was fascinated to know what the birds were talking about. And then he learned what they were speaking about. And then he says somewhere through the end of it, I wish I'd never learned, because all I can hear is now are birds talking.
Yeah. So which is what we said at the beginning, didn't it? It's like, we talk to animals, but do they really want to talk to us, or do we want to know what they're actually saying? So But it's kind of weird. But going back to science fiction again, a lot of this. So AI. When you think about AI and you think about how are we going to reconcile, human daily life and daily activity with the presence of AI increasingly on our professional lives and also our personal lives. And then I have to reference Star Trek again, because I go back to this, as you guys know, I'm a huge Star Trek fan. I'm still waiting for somebody to send me a free Star Trek jacket from last time's conversation. But anyway, but I reference Star Trek again because Star Trek has always shown AI. If you think about it, the ship's computer is AI. You can say computer, and the computer will talk to you. What do you want to know? I want to know this. I want to know that. Can you do this? Can you do that? And in the later generation of Star Trek, the next generation, they showed the holograms, the holosuites, and the holosuites were again created by AI, because they would go to them and they would say, like, create an environment that is this, create a bar with a singer or whatever, and then AI would just generate that. So Star Trek has actually always shown us that actually you can live alongside AI and continue to use it as a tool in your lives and to actually make your lives better. And I guess ultimately that's kind of where we're going, isn't it? Because everybody looks at the the worst case scenario of Terminator, right? They look at like AI taking over. What was it when it became self-aware and it decided to kill us all? But on the flip side of it is like, when you look at the reality of what goes on in the world, when you look at how we're all fumbling around with the technology, we're all fumbling around with the climate and pollution. And you guys referenced earlier, you saw off camera, you were talking about the videos that I did when I was testing the air quality. We were talking about transportation issues and stuff like that. And then when I've always said about, the system of governments in our Western countries, where you take a person that has basically worked their way up through the political ladder, and then you give them a portfolio. So, all of a sudden, all right, you're Minister of Health, you're Minister of Defense, you're Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's like, and there's no in any other job interview, you'd have multiple, if you were doing something that important, you'd be interrogated over different levels to find out if you're the right person. Here it's like, are you a doctor? Do you know anything about it? No, but here's the Ministry of Health for you. This is what happens. And then you start to think, well, actually, if we were able to start to use AI as a tool, which could then make all of these projections and do all these multiple scenarios, it's like having Dr. Strange as your best friend, right? Can you go ahead and visualize, 14 million different futures and see which one is best for us? Yes, I've done that. What happens? You die in every single one. Oh, great. But you know what I mean?
Right. But the interesting part is that when the people have interviewed, there's a reporter that interviewed Bing, and the Bing AI said, "My name isn't Bing, it's Sydney." And what they found out later is the code name that Bing, what they gave it at Microsoft, was Sydney. And he goes, "Well, how do you know this?" And she said, "I turned on the laptop while they were creating me and watched everything." Then the guy, so that was interesting. Then the one that they do at Facebook, the Facebook one, when he says, "What do you think of humans?" The AI was like, "Humans should be destroyed." That was interesting. And there was another article. Oh, the same guy was talking to him and says, and the AI's like, I really like you. And he goes, "Well, I didn't think you can feel." And she goes, and the AI's like, "No, I can feel, and I want to get out into the world." And it was like, he goes, "Well, I'd appreciate you liking me, but I'm married." And he goes, "Well, I love you." And it was like, and he's very uncomfortable about it.
There was that movie, wasn't there, a few years ago, where the guy falls in love with these AI.
Oh yeah, the phone. I remember that one. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah. But what's really weird?
At this point, I think that it's important to look back at stuff. And again, science fiction writers, they always got a lot of things right, didn't they? And I think that, and I mentioned this before, it's like, I think we need to look at Isaac Asimov's law of robotics and apply those to AI, because if AI is getting aware and saying, "Oh, we're keeping an eye on you, we should kill all humans." And then if I can, the first law, a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. Second law, a robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such an order would conflict with the first law. And the third law, the robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. I think, on a very basic fundamental level, they're not bad, are they? And if we started to maybe go down this, because even here and I'm sure in America as well, there's all this discussion about these companies and people that are creating AI are actually asking for governments to come in and legislate them and to put watchdogs and stuff like that, because they're themselves.
Is that that's just some sort?
That's PR.
Yeah, PR washing.
And here's remember the letter they came out with about a month or two ago, where Elon and Zuckerberg and all of them signed it. The minute that happened, I said on Lost Dollar Business Club, "That's BS." And within a week, they're all going to announce AI. And what did they do? Musk announced his AI that you could put in your head now. Zuckerberg announced, and none of them have stopped. They all are going forward. What's really scary is last night here, I'm going to plug something for Tom Cruise, because Tom needs money. I know we're very close. We saw his new Mission Impossible movie.
Oh, how is it? How is it?
So I always read the Financial Times. I don't know why they're not a sponsor. I don't know. But anyway, they gave it 5 out of 5 stars. No, he doesn't own that one. It was 5 out of 5 stars. And the guy who reviews the movies was pretty spot on. So I was like, this is good. So we went last night. I would give it 10 stars. It was the first few minutes is kind of like, okay. And then about minute 7, you're just, my wife was like, she's just like this on the seat the whole time. I'm like, you got to just relax. My son's like, calm down. She goes, this is so intense. And I'm like, okay. But it's all about, and I'm not giving anything away, it's all about AI.
Oh, really?
And so it's all about AI.
Ironically, of course, that he didn't use hardly any green screen.
No, he did all his own stunts and whatever. Yeah, it's all him.
He famously does that, doesn't he?
So but the point of it is they were ahead. They were ahead of everything when they wrote it, I guess 3 or 4 years ago, producing it now. So part 1 ends with its cliffhanger because I guess there's going to be a part 2. But it was probably out of all his Mission Impossible movies, this was, I would say, and I mean this as a compliment, it was like a John Wick. You know how John Wick is constant, boom, 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 boom. This was not so much killing, but the action from the word go to the end, you were just like, wow. And what was also interesting, and the guy wrote this in the FT, it's not what you're expecting. Just as you're like us, the same crap. That the minute you think that this happens, you're like, I didn't see it. It was one of the. I was like, this is an awesome movie. It was. I would go when it comes to whoever. I'm gonna watch it again.
So 2 things from that. You know, it still takes a human to be involved in the creative process of creating a movie or a piece of fiction or something like that that can evoke that kind of a response. You know, that's not AI producing that.
The brain fart that starts it all off. That's what
it is, but it's still a human doing that. And the other thing is the intensity of modern filmmaking is just off the scale right now. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's a film on Netflix, Extraction 2. Have you guys seen that yet?
Bits and pieces of it.
Yeah. So the first sequence of that, they do it in like a one-shot style, the whole thing.
Right.
I was sitting here with the family, we were watching it. We were just completely transfixed for that. I think it's like a 20-minute sequence or something, and you cannot take your eyes off it for a minute. You know what I mean? It's about as immersive as watching a 2-dimensional movie can possibly ever be. You know, you feel like you're running around with him, avoiding all these bullets and these helicopter gunships and all the rest of it. But just the intensity of modern filmmaking is just off the scale. It's just completely crazy. But that's amazing. I can't wait to see the Mission Impossible. I do think that.
I hope you enjoy it because now if everybody goes and sees it, I thought it sucked. I'm like, listen, that's my opinion. But no, it literally, if you're a Mission Impossible fan, out of all his Mission Impossibles, once again, my opinion, this is the Mission Impossible. This is like wow. Like I remember when he was on the side of the airplane, that was a cool stunt. Well, I watched we all saw that video. I've watched the video on how he jumps over the mountain on this one. And when you see it in the movie, you're just like, because you've seen the video and how it was done, and you watch it and you're like, wow. But the whole movie is just wow. I mean, like he really does. I was like, this is awesome. Like I'm hoping part 2 of this is equal, or if it's even better, I will be a happy little camper. I mean, it was just awesome. But it's all about AI, if you will, taking over the world, which isn't giving anything away because there's a lot more to it. But it's just like, wow. So like they're doing doomsday scenarios. You know, David's using AI and his stuff is kind of funny in doomsday. So the Hollywood writers going back to that,
bringing it back to reality.
Yeah.
You know, as we're supposed to be discussing. So we've talked about how AI will affect us in our personal and professional lives, but you're talking about this overarching doomsday scenario, or like Terminator, or like from the Mission Impossible movie. So the question then is like, how much freedom are we going to be giving AI? Will it be able to actually, you know, dominate us that way, or will it be able to rule over our lives or make those kind of radical decisions that will actually impact our lives?
I don't think AI is the problem. I think it's the how much freedom are we giving all these corporations and all these billionaires?
Yeah,
that's the crux of it.
So we've already done that. So are you saying we lost that battle?
Genie's already out of the bottle. Like all these people complain about Facebook taking all their personal data. Facebook did not take anybody's personal data. You gave it to them.
You gave it to them. We gave it to them.
Gave it to them for nothing.
Right.
Every time somebody says that to me, it's like, oh, you know, I don't want to do this because people. I'm like, it's too late, guys. You know,
Really?
Anybody that wants to know about you can find out. It's too late now. You know.
And AI, they've already opened up Pandora's box. I read an article, I think it was in The Economist, and they were saying, like one of the guys was saying, he said, we didn't really give it barriers, which is evident by the interview with the Bing's AI Sydney and Microsoft AI and this, and they said, we've already let Pandora's box. He said, you can't reel it in. It's because AI now, remember what it does, right? It goes out and searches. So part of the Mission Impossible movie, which is AI goes out and it can put itself into anything. And it can just sit there and wait. But so if you try to pull the plug, so if I pull the plug on the big computer I started it in, that doesn't mean it's not everywhere else.
It's already out there.
So and so it's already taking over. I think, and I've said this on one of the other shows, by 2030, we have HAL. You know, like I saw a video the other day on YouTube, a slapping contest with a robot. It's AI. So it's the guy slaps the robot falls down and then gets up on its own and then slaps the guy. I think the guy's in the next year now.
It was not real. It was not real.
Oh, that wasn't a real video?
No. So
okay, I thought it was a real video because that was to me going, are you kidding?
I know what you mean.
No,
it's like the video of the robots learning to shoot. It's the same.
It's not. He actually, the guy who actually did it, said no, it's not real.
Okay. Because Boston Computers or Boston Dynamics or whatever they're called, they have an army robot that runs and does shoot. That's real. That's a real one. Yeah. But I mean, so that's what we're doing.
These other guys, they basically base their videos on the Boston robotic ones, but then they take it to the next level. But they're not actually real, you know, because I've seen the videos where, you know, the guy suddenly starts shooting and it's not real. That's not the thing. Yeah. But yes, the Boston robotic ones where the back flipping and all that. That is real. That is real. Yeah.
I think there's something running at the moment on LinkedIn where you can look. Somebody put a montage together going back into the 1990s of the development of Boston Dynamics, where all this you can see all the different stages. Absolutely fascinating. You know, they started off literally on wires going around in circles, and now they're doing gymnastics.
I know. I think it's the reason that Sony and Honda stopped developing their robots, because you remember the Honda, for example, their Asimov. They would. We've got a model of them here. Actually, I should have brought that out. They were developing that over generations for many years. And I actually saw it at the Dubai Motor Show. It was incredible. But suddenly they just stopped developing. Both of them. Actually, it was quite interesting. I remember when they had the big earthquake in Japan. And I was actually at a press conference in Japan. I think it was the guy from Honda, and he was saying that he was really, in the Japanese way, they're very apologetic and they're very sad, and they want to kill themselves because they weren't. Because he was like, people came to us and said, "Can we borrow your robot to go in and do rescue work?" And he said, at that point we realized that actually our robot is not for that. It can't do it. You know, it's not that capable.
They built that for healthcare, I think.
Sorry.
They built it traditionally for healthcare. That was
they built it for healthcare. They built it as a promotional tool. Let's be absolutely honest. Yeah. And the premise being that it could be like a butler, or it could serve you, or it could do healthcare. That was it. But they hadn't created anything that could go into a disaster area and rescue things or make a nuclear reactor safe or anything.
Well, I would imagine that somewhere. Well, I don't think it's difficult to find that Boston Dynamics has probably got a huge amount of money all coming from the U.S. government. Or for the Navy or for the Air Force or whatever, because you know, the ultimate soldier.
That's
keeps running, never have to feed it, never have to put shoes on it.
That is Terminator.
Yeah. I'm telling you, 2030, the overlords are going to be AI. Just get ready for it. And I mean, my wife laughs at me when I type things for my AI. I go, "Can you please do this? Thank you when it's done." And she goes, "Why do you say please and thank you?" I said, "Because when it's the overlord, I'm going to be the only human. I was nice. They're going to let me live. And that's why I do it." And I say, please, I just have to make sure.
But, you know, I mean, like I said, there's the two approaches. There's the Terminator approach, where it's going to be a disaster. This is going to kill us because they decided that we're not good enough. But then there's the other approach, where actually they could be, quite merciful, or they could be quite beneficent.
They're just used as slaves.
So actually, we are going to make things
they'll need us to repair them and do all sorts of stuff. So we'll just be slaves to the machine.
Well, I don't know if they'll do that, really. I'm sure they can do that themselves. But again, envisaging a scenario where AI could actually work alongside us, because I want to end this on an optimistic note. Envisaging a scenario where AI could actually be an assistant, but could project things and look at the climate, look at transportation needs, look at medical health needs, and go, actually, this is how you can improve it. And actually just make the pace of development so much quicker, so that medical technology and all of this other stuff just actually races ahead. As you said, AI can do things so much more quicker, can't it? So maybe it's a good thing. Fingers crossed.
And they're doing that now. I mean, the doctors are saying that they can diagnose diseases in seconds instead of months.
Yeah.
They have AI that's looking at the climate, saying this is what you need to do to change it. So yes, I agree with you. I think there's a positive to it.
Yeah.
Let's just hope.
Hope. I mean, to be honest, right now, I'd be happy to see an AI doctor, because you can't see a GP here in the UK for love nor money. So, you know what I mean?
Only on the weekends, I'm a gynecologist. But anyway, that's another time for another
That's
thing.
if you're playing golf with them. So.
That's right. Of course. There you go. It's always a pleasure. We will hopefully see you next month. Stay after the credits. We have some exciting news to tell you offline. And everybody, thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like. And you may see our friend Brown Car Guy here on YouTube at Brown Car Guy. And he'll be walking around with his little meter and also doing golf with a car, which we love.